What's going on? Appreciate you for checking out another episode of Chomping at the Bit. I got to talk about the Celtics. The series did not go the way that I thought it was going to go, but I'm also not going to sit here and act like I'm not going to sit here and diminish what the Knicks did. The Knicks were the better team over the course of the series. That's just what it is. The Knicks are moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Celtics season's over. Their bid to go back to back is over. But the season doesn't end necessarily because now Brad Stevens and the Celtics front office have a lot to do and a lot of decisions to make. Obviously, the team is expensive. Just went through a sale. You'd have to understand the new owner may not want to pay the luxury tax bill that they currently are paying being in the second apron. And with being in the second apron, a lot of restrictions the Celtics face, potentially. Now, a lot of people are talking about the Celtics blowing it up just because of Tatum being injured, missing next season, probably. Just blowing it up, starting it all over, tearing it down. I don't think that happens. Because what we also have to think about is other teams that have cap space that could take on some of the salaries the Celtics would be looking to dish out. So when you look at the team, there are decisions that will need to be made about certain players. Obviously, the big one, Porzingis. The way the series ended for Porzingis, it's going to be very easy to dump him and act like he needs to go. Which, yes, I get that. He's an expiring deal, which could help the Celtics moving him if they wanted to. But you also have to understand, if the new owner is fine paying luxury tax one season, Porzingis' deal comes off the books next year anyway. And then at that point, it's whether or not you look to re-sign him, which, given the financial situation, I don't think that happens. So the question would be, does Brad Stevens just kind of pull the trigger this offseason, try to move him out? I don't know what they would take in because, like I said, the complications are the amount of money that they could bring back in a deal. It's like cut and dry. The also amount of players you can bring back, I think it has to be a one-for-one swap. And if the Celtics are going to do that, they're obviously going to try to do that cost-cutting. So if Porzingis is making $31 million or something, they'd want to deal him out for somebody who makes less to bring the cap number down a little bit. So that's going to be the challenge surrounding Porzingis. That's why I'm saying there's a chance Porzingis hangs around. Maybe the trade deadline might be a little bit easier to move him, and they go about it that way. Second player, got to talk about Jrue Holiday. Jrue Holiday had the finger injury for a lot of the season. You saw like the black tape on his, I think it was his pinky, on his shooting hand. He's another guy decisions need to be made on. He's under contract, I believe, next year and the year after. But once again, a point guard who has championship experience, Jrue Holiday now has 2 rings to his name, could be very valuable in a league that, if you look at the final 4 teams, guard heavy. Knicks, Brunson, Ant, Minnesota, SGA, Thunder, Halliburton, Pacers. Those are the leading guys on those 4 teams, all guards. So maybe some shift in philosophy with team building. Maybe Holiday could fetch you something to a team like Orlando. Orlando's a team that could use a veteran point guard to help make Banchero better. Something like that. Not saying that they would make it work that way, but I'm just saying teams like that might be interested in a Jrue Holiday. Maybe the Bucks. Maybe you could get him back to the Bucks. The Bucks will probably be without Lillard for a good portion next season. Obviously, the Bucks have their own decisions to make with Giannis. So if Giannis does want to stay, maybe Milwaukee becomes a spot where you can move Holiday. Once again, don't know necessarily for what, but just giving you some options. Then, I guess on a lesser case, Sam Hauser. I think Hauser might be the first shoe to drop if they were to start dealing a couple of guys. And I think with Hauser, yes, 3-point specialist. We get that. I feel like his defense is a little underrated. But I also think Bailey Shireman is Bailey or Baylor? Baylor Shireman. I don't know why I said Bailey. Baylor Shireman kind of shown when he was given minutes that he's a guy who can knock down a three. He can play make a little. So I think if you wanted a cheaper option by moving Hauser out, you already have that in-house with Shireman. So I think Hauser, unfortunately, depending how you feel, Celtics fans, you got to let me know. Obviously, I like Hauser, but I really like Shireman and what he could bring. So I think the Hauser move is necessary. And by moving Hauser first, it may make it a little bit easier, potentially with Porzingis or Holiday. A lot of people talking about Jaylen Brown or Derrick White. I think the way Brad Stevens will treat this is Tatum, obviously after next season. Brown, White might be your core three going forward. Now, it looks like in today's NBA, with the second apron and what it does, you can't have too many large contracts, which the Celtics kind of have at this point. But they did get their ring last season, so it was worth it. But now you got to think, new landscape of the NBA, how can the Celtics now transform this roster to fit the new NBA while staying competitive? That's why I outlined. Hauser's probably gone. Porzingis, I think calls will be made. It's whether or not you can find a partner. And Holiday, because of it seeming like the game is switching back to maybe a guard-led league, Holiday will bring some value. And with the Celtics, you move Holiday out. That just creates, room for Pritchard maybe to be a starting point guard. You obviously have Derrick White who can play the point guard position. So you have pieces in place if you do move Holiday out that you can still function. So obviously, like I said, if Tatum, Brown, White are your core three going forward, you're going to have to fill it out with low-cost options. Draft picks are going to be very important. They have 28 and 32 this season in this draft coming up in June. They'll have to find guys who may not make an impact next season, but short-term can develop and possibly become either assets for something down the road or rotational pieces in a couple of years. Which leads me to a couple of the young guys who decisions will have to be made on as well. I think Jordan Walsh is eligible for an extension. He would be a low-cost option that I think on this team, if you could carve out a role for him next year, I think he can contribute. He plays defense. He's very long with long arms and everything. I feel like his shot, he's become more confident in it. I think he could be a rotation guy next season. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Celtics did extend him. Because like I said, he'd be a low-cost option you could control for a few years. J.D. Davison, they converted his two-way deal into an NBA contract, I believe. Or they could do that. It's something with J.D. Davison, but I think J.D. Davison would be a guy, make a lot of sense to stay, especially if you're going to move out. Holiday, you'll need another point guard. Davison, he's a G League MVP. Obviously, G League, NBA, two different, but I think J.D. Davison is another guy. You carve out a role for him. Let's say you move Pritchard, starting lineup. If Davison is a depth point guard coming off the bench, I think J.D. Davison can play. So I think the Celtics would feel comfortable giving J.D. Davison a little bit more in moving on from Holiday. I believe the next one would be Drew Peterson, who, I mean, I think Drew Peterson is a guy who would just be a roster compliant type of guy, because that's going to be another thing with any potential deal. The Celtics will have to make sure they stay roster compliant, which means you have to have 14 active contracts, which I think is why J.D. Davison will play part of that, because he would add a number to the 14. So I think those ones, I feel like with those young players would be easy. I think Hauser move would be easy because of Shireman, like I said. Porzingis and Holiday, you have decisions to make. Porzingis, I think, is a little bit easier because if he does stay, he's gone after next year anyway, off the books. Holiday has a couple of years left. That might be tough. Then there's the center position. Horford and Kornet are free agents. And look, I'm sure you all would agree with me. Love Horford and Kornet. I think it's going to come down to what is their value out there on the open market and how eager are either looking to leave. Horford, I think at this point, he loves Boston. Boston loves him. If he wants to continue to play, he probably could stay in Boston, but it'd have to be maybe like a vet minimum type thing, which Horford is pushing 40, won his ring last year, which so happy for him. Maybe he's willing to do that just for happiness' sake, being in Boston. Luke Kornet, I don't know. I don't know how he's viewed outside by other teams. Maybe was it game 5 when he had the 7 blocks with the 9 rebounds and all that. Maybe some team pays potential with him. He's not the youngest guy. He's actually been around for a little bit, but you never know. All it takes is one team to throw some crazy potential deal at him. He gets priced out of Boston. So you kind of have to prepare yourself for Horford and or Kornet not being here. I think more so if Horford isn't here, he probably retired. I don't know at this point whether or not he would kind of uproot, go somewhere else for only like a year. I don't know. The only time will tell with Horford. Horford will have all the time in the world to make that decision. I think Kornet's a guy that if you did move on from Porzingis, that creates more minutes for Kornet. And I think as Kornet has shown, he can rim protect. He, can finish around the rim, lob, all that kind of stuff. He'll set screens. He does that. I do wonder what happened to. I think I said this in another video, but Kornet, when he first got to the Celtics, was a 3-point shooter, and for some reason he doesn't shoot them anymore. I wonder, increased role, maybe work with him and bringing that back into his game, because he would low-key be an interesting big off your bench with his energy, his rim protection, and ability to stretch the floor. I would love to see it come back in his game, but he's still effective as he is right now. So I'm not saying he needs it, but I would like to see it come back. You're going to hear a lot of rumors about Jaylen Brown. Like I said, I think Brad Stevens didn't move Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant those years ago. I feel like Brad Stevens is kind of locked into Brown being a core piece. So next season will look different. Obviously no Tatum, which will put obviously a lot more on Brown to be the guy, as well as whatever pieces shift around him. I mean, I was listening to Colin Cowherd. He's throwing out Lauri Markkanen, which if Brad Stevens could get Lauri Markkanen onto this team, give that man Executive of the Year, no matter what else happens in the NBA. I think Markkanen is making like 40-something a year, though. That's where the problem is gonna lie. That's why I'm like, to make something like that happen, your best chance would be Porzingis, who's an expiring contract. We know Danny Ainge loves those. but Porzingis only makes 30 something. And because second apron has to be like 1-to-1, so if you're gonna do Porzingis for marketing, they'll have to shed salary somewhere else first before working that deal in to make sure that marketing fits under whatever. So, like I said, Celtics season is over. It's not the end we all wanted, but now kind of the fun begins. Because we're going to see, we know Brad Stevens is not afraid to make moves. Now it's his time to play a little bit. And we will see some changes, obviously, from this season to next season. How drastic they are, well, time will tell. Because I believe once the NBA Finals ends, the very next day, I believe that's the first day you can start talking to your potential free agents. So season ends, we may hear a Horford decision, Kornet decision pretty soon after that. Hauser, like I said, if you're going to deal him, obviously got to work that out. But yeah, we'll see. See how it goes. So like I said, Celtics season ended, losing in 6 games to the Knicks. Congratulations to the Knicks. Good luck to you against the Pacers in the conference finals. But Celtics fans, so I'm going to sit here and talk all this time about the Knicks. So you let me know in the comments what you think the Celtics will do and what you think they should do if you think they're different. I would love to hear from you. Who are the guys you think they need to sign or need to deal? Let me know. Anything Celtics offseason related, let me know in the comment section. Let's have a conversation about it. I guess if you want to know my pick going forward, I would say finals, Thunder over Pacers in 6. Yeah. So appreciate you for tuning in. Really do. If you could hit the like button, greatly appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, thanks for coming in. Feel free to subscribe or follow, depending on what your pleasure is, what platform you are watching or listening to this on. Do have to show love to those audio listeners. And yeah, if you, I guess, are on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, look out. Got a couple articles that I plan on putting out this week, and obviously some more videos. I do have to talk some Red Sox and Connecticut Sun. So I'll look for, and Patriots. Have a video coming out this week on the Patriots schedule, my thoughts, maybe some predictions as well. So make sure you stick around for that. But you enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe. God bless. I'm out of here. Join the Discord. It's in the description for more sports talk from me. I have a little community over there. It's still very small, but would love to see some of you in there. Make it a little bigger. And we'll continue to grow it out. Because like I said, I love talking sports even when I don't do these videos or if I'm not live. So thanks again. Be safe. God bless. I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.